Thank you, Deputy Speaker. And it has been wonderful hearing the new members from right across the parliament share their stories and their hopes for this parliament. And I too, Deputy Speaker, would like to do that. It's been a long time since Labor sat on this side of the chamber, and the first time I've had the privilege to do so, and I'm very honoured to be here. The issue that we have faced, and I've spoken about many times from the other side, has really been about a failure of those who sat on these benches, on this side of the House, to pay heed to the needs of my electorate, the electorate of Macquarie, the Blue Mountains and the Hawkesbury, which has so many natural attributes but has also suffered so much since I have been in this place. And the overwhelming emotions that people shared with me when the result of the election was known was one of hope. Hope that things could now be different, that they could be better, and a sense of relief that there were now, the grown-ups were back in charge. And we absolutely intend to meet the expectations that our communities have of us with the privilege of being on this side of the House. In the last 2.5 years, my community's faced 4 natural disasters, plus many other weather events that don't rate as natural disasters. But what that's done is create a community that feels really under the pump. You add COVID to that, and you have individuals feeling anxious and stressed. You have children who, when it rains, are feeling quite fearful, or when they smell smoke, have flashbacks of what occurred in the 2019-20 bushfires. You have a local economy that feels like such a pressure cooker, that there is not as much money flowing through the local economy, and people are really feeling the sort of pressure that I don't think that they're saying to me they've never felt it before. And I think we have a job, now that we are in government, to do everything we can to alleviate that pressure, to allow people to live their lives without a feeling of a threat hanging over them. And that's certainly what many of the commitments I made during the campaign and have made over many years will allow us to do. The very first one of those is, of course, related to legislation that we introduced already this week, and that is action on climate change, because many of our issues are related to that. We are at the forefront of experiencing the effects of climate change. It's not something esoteric to us, it's not something off in the future, it's something that happened a few weeks ago and a couple of months before that and a year before that. So we are feeling that. And I've just come from a briefing with the insurance industry, who advised me that my community has the highest premiums in the state, that we are already paying the price for a lack of action to tackle climate change, thanks to those who are in the position that we're in now for the last decade, and that's just shameful. Our action on climate change is going to be one of the things that fundamentally gives hope to my community, gives hope that we can mitigate some of the effects that we are feeling. But on top of that, I'm very proud to be able to provide very tangible supports. One of the things we rely on right across Australia when there are natural disasters are volunteers. Now, the volunteer workforce who are in the Rural Fire Service, who are in the SES, who in fact are people who volunteer for Anglicare or the Red Cross, they're the ones who keep stepping up and stepping up and stepping up time and time again. One of my commitments relates directly to the Rural Fire Service and the SES, and where I've made sure that they are going to see funds coming to them that allow them to make decisions for their own rural fire brigade, their Rural Fire Service headquarters or their SES headquarters, that make their life easier, make it easier for them to serve the community in the way they choose to do it. So every rural fire brigade in my electorate will receive $50,000. And that will allow them to make decisions about what their volunteers need. Now, already they're starting to think about what might be useful, and it ranges from mental health support through to a washing machine and quite frankly, they're at the point of realising they do not want to take contaminated, fire, smoke-filled clothes back to their family homes to ask family members to wash or to throw in their domestic washing machine. So really practical things that make it easier for them to be volunteers. That is how we can start to alleviate some of the stress on the ground. And I hope that what it will do is make up for years of not being able to fundraise. Because when you're in the disaster, when you're recovering from the disaster, it is very hard to go to your community and ask them to give more, given so many of them are suffering themselves. I really want to shout out to the RFS and SES, who, of course, only in the last few weeks have yet again stepped up. They're not alone. I spoke yesterday in this place about some of the many volunteers who get involved when there is a disaster in the operation of it and in the recovery. We have a commitment to make sure those recoveries are easier. It's never going to be easy, but we need to give people a way forward, and I have high expectations that over the next little while people will go, right, I can see a difference between how a Labor government responds to a disaster versus how the previous government did. I'm going to give you one example of my personal experience of a disaster. Back in 2013, when my house burnt down in the Blue Mountains bushfires, the very next day, the day after about 200 homes had burnt down, a Liberal cabinet made a decision to cut emergency support. They cut it so that if you had been unable to return to your house for a number of days, you were no longer eligible for support. If your house was still standing and didn't catch on fire, you weren't considered to have been disaster impacted. They also cut out the ability to access a small amount of support, $1,000 we're talking, if your house was without power. Originally, under the Gillard government, we had said to people, if you've been without power in your home for a number of days, you've got spoilage, you've got waste, your life has had an upheaval. And no doubt many people will have had to have found alternate accommodation. But no, the Liberal government decided that is not part of it. And can I just say, those amounts, those $1,000, it's not a big amount, and if you've lost your house, it certainly doesn't cover all the costs that you're going to face. But it makes a difference then and there. It's the first little step to relieving the pressure that you're under financially. And I really want to commend the Minister in the House for his, Minister for Human Services, for his reaching out to me to say we want to make sure those payments get through to people quickly and effectively. And I will continue to do that and identify the ones where we're seeing glitches in the system. But I know as a government we're going to do this better. We are already doing this better. Comparison for me is last flood, my office was inundated with distressed people who'd been unable to access that small amount of money. And this time we have seen a much greater speed with which it's flowed through. And I really welcome that. When we think about the pressures and climate change, there's real hope in many of the commitments that we've made and will be delivering over the next 3 years. One of those is very practical for my community, and that's community batteries. I've committed to having one in East Blackstone and one in Hobartville, and that will be part of that pilot where we roll out and say to people, we know that not everyone can afford to put a battery that their solar feeds into in their home. Not everyone has those thousands of dollars sitting around to be invested in it, but the community battery will allow us to do that on a community scale. And that is going to make a difference for many people. Both East Blackstone and Hobartville have a high take-up, about 1,000 homes with solar on their roof, but neither of them have very many registered batteries, if any. So again, people have looked at practical things, and I'm so proud of the policy set we've put forward that says to people this can actually be a win-win. There's not a loser here. This is about it working for everybody. The Blue Mountains is World Heritage listed. That makes it a pretty special place and one that deserves protection. But equally, the Hawkesbury has an extraordinary river. Now, that river has been damaged by natural disasters, but also a whole lot of other erosion issues. There hasn't been very much money in the last decade invested in that river. I think that's a tragedy. It is not only our source of water, it can also be a huge source of threat to us, but it is the thing that makes the Hawkesbury what it is. It allows us to have the agriculture we have. It also allows us to have an ecosystem, a beautiful river ecosystem. And one of my commitments is to ensure that the Hawkesbury Environment Network receives $1 million to be able to invest back into our local Hawkesbury environment. The Hawkesbury Environment Network brings together a whole lot of community groups, and they will have time to think about the most effective ways that we can do that. No doubt collaborating with other organisations, whether it's our council or those involved in the catchment. And that's, again, another really practical thing that we can do for our environment. It is a precious area, and I am not under any illusions that we have challenges. And every single person in the Blue Mountains knows that the flight paths for the Western Sydney Airport are going to be an enormous challenge for our community, and my commitment is to work that through as transparently as we're able to, but I can guarantee engagement with the community so that views are properly heard, unlike the processes we saw when the environmental impact statement for the Western Sydney Airport was first done, where the community's views were really just brushed aside. I think everyone on this side knows that there are going to be lots of challenges that face us, and we face them knowing that we have a community with a huge amount of expertise, a huge commitment to the areas in which people live, and we will work with them on those issues. When you think natural disaster, you might not instantly think mobile phone, but quite frankly, that is life and death in a natural disaster. And one of the challenges we've faced in the Blue Mountains and Hawkesbury is that there has been very sporadic coverage. There are black spots all over the place. On my way to work from my home in the Blue Mountains in Winmalee to my office in the Hawkesbury in Windsor, it's about a 40-minute drive, I go through 2 black spots, both of them in highly bushfire-prone areas. So I'm very pleased that there is already the funding now to fix some of those black spots. One of those is Hawkesbury Heights. The Oakville is also smattered with black spots, and under the pump program, I'm very pleased to see that we have Oakville in that program. And Bullaburra is another one. But there are many others that need to follow. And my commitment is that we will get fixes to the issues that face Bowen Mountain with their mobile coverage. Again, another highly fire vulnerable community, and also at risk of landslides in those extraordinary rains that we have now seen. Blackstone's Ridge, another area that has been neglected. I can't think of a single thing that those who were in government prior to us did that would have helped with the services for Blackstone's Ridge. But we will not be forgetting small communities, vital communities like that. Moralia is another one, Mount Tomah and Yellow Rock. Now let me tell you the Mount Tomah story. When the previous government sat on this side of the parliament, they promised to fix Mount Tomah, a black spot on Bell's Line of Road, one of the major routes that people use to travel from Sydney to the west. They promised a mobile tower. In fact, it was there, it was committed, and then all of a sudden it disappeared. And I couldn't work out what had happened to it. What had happened was that the job got a little bit too hard. The government decided that there was somewhere easier for it to go, and they sent it out west to a safe national seat. And the vulnerable communities of Mount Wilson, Mount Irvine, Barrambing, Mount Tomah, Bilpin lost a vital, potentially life-saving tower. Now, we will restore that tower. We will make sure that that black spot is fixed. Now, Yellow Rock thought itself lucky when it got given a mobile tower by those opposite. Sadly, that tower does not provide a mobile coverage for the bulk of the Yellow Rock community. So yet again, one of the things we will be doing is cleaning up the mess, fixing the things that were half done, the things that did not meet community expectations. If what they'd done had met community expectations, I can tell you I wouldn't be standing here. They failed to meet community expectations. It was all announcement, all glitz, but on the ground it didn't deliver. We will not make that mistake. I'm sure we'll make mistakes, but it won't be that one. We will work to deliver every single commitment that we have already spoken about. If I look at the natural disasters that we've had, finding refuge has been a really tough one for families because we don't have any purpose-built places. We have a challenging community with one road that goes from the top of the mountains to the bottom, with real traffic problems and crossing problems when the rivers flood. But one thing that will improve the access to help for people across the river on the North Richmond side of the Hawkesbury will be upgrades to the North Richmond Community Centre. Now, there will be some. What my concern about the Hawkesbury is it's a very large area. It's 3,000 square kilometres. So I'm not going to promise that it's going to be the solution for everybody. But what we'll be doing is upgrading it so that people can be there, they can take refuge there, and it will be much better appointed for that, with showers, with toilets, with better space. And I'm looking forward to working with the council and the community to make sure that facility meets expectations. We talk a lot in the Blue Mountains and Hawkesbury about disasters. That's because we face them a lot. But I'm so pleased to see that our government is going to be making the daily life better for many people. One of my areas of passion is around mental health. And I can't count the number of times I've spoken about it in this chamber. I'm very pleased to see that we have already, in only 9 weeks in being in government, announced additional funding for the Katoomba Headspace, and I look forward to talking more about the detail of that. But the big change will be having a headspace for the Hawkesbury. This is a big commitment, but could save lives and change lives of kids in the Hawkesbury and their families, and it's only possible because of the enormous support the community has given to that. It's sad that it's taken this long to achieve it. We could have had it 6 years ago. We could have had it after the 2019 bushfires. We could have had it after the 2021 floods. Sadly, we've had to wait for another 2 natural disasters before we're deemed worthy of it by those opposite, and it's taken a long time and a lot of advocacy. But that's one of the things that we want to do, is make life better for people, to address the concerns that they have. Another way we're going to do that is through the Veterans Hub. And I'm very much looking forward to working with all the stakeholders to see where we put a Veterans Hub that is for veterans and takes into account the needs of defence families who will ultimately be users of that service. These are things that won't be used by everybody, but they'll be used by people who really, really need them. Things that will have a wider use are support for the Marana Aboriginal Community Association, who I've committed $150,000 to upgrade their building so that we can facilitate in-reach to them, so medical practitioners can come, so services can be provided within that facility. Again, these are, some people won't mean anything to them, but for those who use it, it could potentially be life-changing. And these are, Marana is an organisation that does a lot with little. I'm very, very proud to be able to support them. There are a range of other commitments that I've made to my electorate. Things like improving, upgrading dog parks, small commitments, but gee, that can also change the way you use your local parks. Improvements for parks across the Blue Mountains and the Hawkesbury. A shared pedestrian footpath cycleway from Hawkesbury Heights to Winmalee. I remember how good it was when I was able to get out and push my kids when they were young in a stroller and have one in a trike riding alongside. These are the sorts of things that make life better, that give you a sense of hope that you can get through a day sometimes. And they're the sorts of things that this government will do. We're going to do the big things, like tackling climate change. We're going to do the small things that actually make people's lives bigger. And I'm so very proud to be part of that government.
I thank the honourable